everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. Everybody, please rise to the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Glad to see you. I was curious.
Okay, for roll call, just note that we are missing Mr. Lindgren tonight. Could not make it. Everyone else is present from the board. We did have an executive session prior to this meeting. Was supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and I apologize it didn't, so we went over. So thanks everybody for being patient and letting us get through the executive session. It was to discuss potential litigation. And at this time, do we have any public comment? I know I don't have any sheets, but anybody wish to make public comment at this time? Sure, come on up.
My name is Karen Durstein. I am the service unit manager for the Girl Scouts in our area for Pottstown and Pottsgrove schools. I am here because we received a letter from the district and we reached out about having a meeting and we just have a statement for the use of the schools. We have currently enrolled 250 girls, and 175 of them are Pottsgrove students. We have at least 6 troops that meet and use the schools, and we use them for our events. We really don't have any other areas, churches. Some of the churches let us in, but we don't really have any other areas in Pottsgrove townships to meet. I've even checked into township buildings, different things like that, to accommodate the girls safety-wise also. We are concerned about the new policies for the use of the facilities, and we were wondering how the process is going to work, and we're asking for the fee waiver and to seek seeking in-kind contributions, and we've written a letter, but we hadn't gotten any response, and we came tonight because our year actually started in the beginning of September, so now we've lost an entire month to the girls not having program, which is very important to the older girls and the younger girls. We would like to know how we can rectify this situation and how we can guide these girls to actively become involved citizens of courage, confidence, and character, which is what we strive to teach them.
Thanks, and I mean, I guess I can say I'm sure we can't give a definitive answer to all your questions here. We're not prepared, but
We're just asking for a meeting, which was in the letter that we outlined, but when we requested it, we haven't heard anything back since the beginning of the month. So that's why we're asking, how do we go
Okay.
about getting a meeting, and with who?
so
I'll reach out.
we can, yeah. So somebody will get back in touch with you so that you can get the full explanation and have the meeting with some people from the admin.
Okay.
And excuse me, I just want to be clear. You've.
I'm
I saw you looking around. You've not had your regular meetings.
No. We can't. We need facility signed forms. We submit one every year. And when we fill out these forms, we have fees this year, and I mean, we're a nonprofit organization. We're not even allowed to carry $100 in our bank accounts over. We have to deplete all of our funds at the end of a year because of girls not returning and whatnot. So when we're asked to pay fees and we don't know about them, or we can't ask council to allow the extra funds or anything, we can't, there's no way we can do that physically. Like
Okay,
this.
I was just looking to make sure I understood
Yeah, no,
that. I
thank
appreciate that.
Okay.
What's concerning to me, though, is that we just heard that a letter was sent and has been sitting here for maybe close to 3 weeks. Can we be rest assured, this board, that there'll be a response sent out tomorrow, and that this kind of thing really not occur? I mean, it's affecting a number of girls in the community, and there's no reason that it should have waited, 3 weeks or whatever it is, just to get a response.
I just have one question. When you fill in your form for your request, was that last year for this school year?
No, we do them all in the beginning of September.
Like
So,
this September?
Yes. So we
Okay.
normally submit them to the principal that the school we're at. So I know we have girls in Brigham Rocks, we have girls at the middle school, we have girls at West. But when we received the email from going out, or the letter going out, which my leader did, received it, because she's the one that usually fills out the paperwork. She brought it to me and said, I don't know, we have to request a meeting, so I want you, because I'm the manager, to go do this, so. Yeah, we always do it at the beginning of the year for that year being used, yes. No.
Oh, and this may seem like a stupid question, but do any of your meetings come on the weekend?
No, they're
Okay.
all evening hours, or
During the
right
week.
after school, during the week, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, if we don't have any more public comment at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Shirk for the report of the superintendent.
Good evening. Tonight, we have action items from personnel. We start with the professional staff resignations. I ask that you approve the professional staff resignations as submitted.
I'd like to make a motion to combine all action items for personnel.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to combine 4.1 through 4.6. Any questions or comments on any of these items? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Moving on to business items. The 5.1, the P3 grant, we're asking you to recommend to accept 2 grants from the prenatal third P3 in the amount of $10,000 each.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great.
5.2, transportation agreement. We ask that you authorize administration to enter into a transportation service agreement with CMD Services Incorporated for the 2017-18 school year as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments here? I have, well, yeah, I just have one. I just usually wait and make sure, but, so I'm just wondering, it's a significant increase this time around. I know it hasn't always been, but this has been our contractor for quite some time. And my question is, have we looked, have we at least validated, I'm not saying shop the contract around, but have we validated that this is the best option, and how have we done that?
We have not bid the services since my arrival here, and probably not for years before that. I know at one point in time there was a study done to compare costs of other avenues. We are a unique district in that we own the vehicles and they provide the housing, the maintenance, and the routes, the drivers. So we're unique. There's probably not another 2 districts in the state that operate the way we do. And we found it to be very cost effective. That being said, I can't say that we've done any market verification. So if that's something the board would like to do, I would suggest it's not going to be something that we can do quickly, and we can't make a change quickly. So if that's something the board would charge us with doing, I would ask that you give me this year to do a study and gather the information going into next year.
I would just, and thanks for the answer, I would say it would be us doing our due diligence if we did that. Yeah, so I personally wouldn't ask you to change after all the work is done, but I think it's worth at least taking a look at. That's just me.
I would just also add that it makes me a little nervous to think we're unique. I guess I'm willing to accept the possibility that we're doing it right and everybody else is doing it wrong. But it certainly is possible that it's the opposite. So some validation along those lines, particularly as it relates to ownership of the buses, because let's face it, we spent a pretty penny to buy those buses. But I also imagine in the other arrangement where the contracted company owns the buses, you're still paying for them in one way, shape, or form. So.
Yeah, and just as an aside, and without any numbers to back it up, typically when you contract with a vendor to provide transportation services and vehicles, you put in a stipulation that the vehicles have to be 4 years old or less, so that you're assured that they can run effectively. We hold ours for 14 or 15 years. So I think that may be the difference. I think that would most likely push the contracted services higher than ours.
Do you need a motion for this, or is this something we can just get for the following year?
If board directive to perform a study, I can do, that's fine. What we need a motion for is the current year contract.
Right, we have that in a second. Right.
Quick question. Just a definition of what the additional work requested by the contractors, by the district has been?
There's been a number of complex transportation routes that have been created over the years, non-public school runs, switching to centers, things of that nature, that have caused additional time rerouting and addressing challenges that arise as a result of them.
I'd like to see about making a motion to table this until we actually get the study back.
But if we're given time to do the study, we have to have transportation in the meantime. Like, when's this? This is for the 17-18 school year.
Yeah, this is for the current school year. They've been providing the transportation without a contract at this point in time, essentially.
So this is a one-year contract then?
Correct, it's a one-year contract.
And if it would take you some time to do the study, then I think we should vote on this now.
Okay, just, so, Mr. Knight, go ahead, weigh into that if you would, please.
Last year, CMD came to me with a request for a 10% structural increase. I said, there's no way we can do that, although it appeared as though they had incurred the additional cost to justify it. So what we talked about at that point in time was breaking that 10% up over a 3-year period. So the structural increase last year was 5%, plus a 2.5% cost of living increase. This year, they're asking, we're proposing a 2.5% structural increase with a 2% cost of living. And if we're still contracting with them next year, we would probably be asking for another 2.5% structural increase to get them that 10%, okay? But this is a one-year contract. It's for the 17-18 school year. And if we choose to changed for 2018-19. We changed for 2018-19.
The only question I would have is the wording. It says, "We agree to the 5% structural increase in this component for 2016-17 and recommend a structural increase for 2.5 in this component for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 year." That, to me, reads as 2 years.
That's in a note to you guys. The contract is for 17-18. And the board actions for 17-18.
So just for clarification purposes tonight, Mr. Nestor, we're asking for $6,021 for CMD this evening, okay, which we have a motion on the floor. And then the board, and Mr. Alexander obviously has made the request to go out and look for possibly bid this out. Is that the wishes of the entire board? Because obviously this ball would have to roll next week so that we could be prepared if it was a change for the 18-19 school year, which we would want to have that change ready to go in June almost. I mean, yeah, so I guess I just want that clarification from the board because that is something we'd have to focus on, and I just want everybody's full support with that project.
Did we say we were going to bid this out? Is that?
I'm not asking.
Yeah, I didn't hear
I'm
that.
not
That's
asking
not what
for it
I
to be
heard,
bid out.
so-
I'm just
so-
asking us to review. If it's been 15 years, and we're one of 2 or 3 districts that own the buses but contract the services, is it still the best way? What's the best thing going now? And, you know, not put it out to bid. If that's the conclusion of the study, then fine, but I'm just asking.
I just wanted to make that clear, for us so that we could focus on exactly what you wanted.
So I'll ask, is everybody okay if we look into this, or does? Yes. Okay.
There was also a motion to table, but it wasn't. So I did not take the motion back since we don't have to. Okay.
Okay, so as far as this contract for 17-18, any more questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Alexander. High school change order. We ask that the board approve change order number EC 020 in the amount of $28,371.96 for work completed at the high school as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this? This work's been done. Yeah, so, right, okay. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, thanks.
Construction invoices. We ask the board to approve the construction invoices for the Pottsgrove High School renovation project as presented.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay, moving on to education items. We ask the board to approve the recommended mentors as submitted.
We have a motion and a second on 2 mentors for new teachers. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, moving on to conference attendance. We ask the board to approve the conference attendance item as submitted.
We have a motion and a second for conference attendance. Any questions or comments?
It's a stupid one. Do I have to abstain since my son's running cross-country? Then in that case, aye.
Okay, my one question I have, being familiar with the track and field convention, we're approving 1 coach. I do know there's other high school coaches that will be attending, and I don't see they're included in this. So do we want to do this just for the middle school and then the high school do separate?
I mean, at this point, this is what we received, so when we received it, we, we get them to you, timely, within that 30-day window. So we do have we have several meetings in the next couple
Okay.
weeks.
Just so we know when we come back that we didn't approve everybody, that we're just approving this one coach for this.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Committee items, we're asking for reports tonight. I know Mr. Lingmer's not here, but I wonder if Mr. Parker or Mrs. Custer would like to report out on the operations and facilities, or we want to postpone that for next time? Okay. All right, we'll hold on the report for next time. Athletics and co-curricular? Report, please.
Okay. So we met Tuesday night last week. 3 main points that we covered. I'll go with the good first. So as we've spoken about a few times over the last year or so, we have given direction to Mr. Dorenzo to proceed with with his plan to form a Pottsgrove Athletics Hall of Fame. So what that would include is a kind of more of a wall of fame in the front hall of the athletics entrance to the building. There would possibly be 1 to 2 athletes or Pottsgrove Athletics figures inducted per year, and with the maximum of 3, I think, we said. But this would, of course, date back to the beginning of Pottsgrove School District, and hopefully at some point we'd eventually catch up to where we are in current time. But included in that would be the formation of a committee, which would be administration and coaches, and possibly some, a member at large, like a coaching alumnus or some kind of group of that nature. And then we also will have to create a policy around this. So I know Mr. Dorenzo's looking into best practice type policies at other school districts that currently have the Hall of Fame, but we're not rushing this process through. We're moving it through thoughtfully, and I know that Gary is doing a lot of work to try and pull this together and make it something that's greatly successful first time around. So possibly by the beginning of next school year, we would be ready to have that first induction ceremony, but we have a few things to accomplish in the meantime with the formation of first a policy and then selection of the actual committee. So that was one of the things that we talked about and got a status update on. The second thing that Mr. Dorenzo proposed, and I committed to bringing as well to the full board tonight for kind of agreement to continue moving forward with this. As you know, we just put into place a girls volleyball team at the high school level. It was such a huge success, actually, that I think we had something like 50 students come out for this team, and unfortunately, can't fit 50 kids on one volleyball team. So that was the downside of it, was that we couldn't take everybody, but wow, it was, I mean, hugely popular, a lot of interest. And with that, it's kind of the belief of the committee and Mr. Dorenzo that we should be feeding these programs with kids that at least are coming in with a little bit of experience. So with that said, the next goal would be to establish that girls volleyball program as well as a boys lacrosse program at the middle school level. We do feel there's a lot of demand for this. We are sure about lacrosse because we have boys high school lacrosse, and boys lacrosse is a very solid youth program in this area. So we know there's kids coming up from youth. It ends at 6th or 7th grade, then they have this dead period between that and when they can start playing for the high school unless they travel far for clubs. So offering that continuity in lacrosse and then starting to offer that continuity for volleyball. So Gary had some very preliminary numbers. They weren't big, but there will be an additional cost to have, 2 additional teams at the middle school. If it's okay, if we have support there, then we can ask Mr. Durenzo to come to a meeting, give us a little bit more detail with a short presentation, and then we would need a motion for him to allow him to move forward with these 2 things, so the Hall of Fame and these middle school programs. I'm not sure how many questions I can answer about either of those 2 things, but if anybody has any, I'll be happy to try. The third, do you have? Before
Well, not directly, but indirectly related is something I've been meaning to ask for a long time, actually, about our middle school sports programs in general, and this would certainly be relevant to adding a lacrosse and volleyball program there as well. Is we start our programs in 7th grade, and I've heard from, just this year, I've heard from 5 6th grade parents asking why we don't allow 6th graders to participate. And I'm sure there's a really good reason, but I didn't know what the answer was. So I figured, since you brought it up.
It's a PIAA regulation.
It's a regulation, so 6th
We
graders.
do have intramural sports for 6th graders.
I know we do, but in one case, it's a girl who's a pretty accomplished runner already. She can't participate in our sports, and that's because it's PIAA. Right. So now I can answer the question. Great. And obviously, this would start in the 7th grade then, which is the related question. Okay. Well, I think it's a great idea. So.
Thank you. Third, we talked about funding. So we know our athletics program itself is not a big chunk of our annual budget. For the most part, each athletic program is self-funded. So the kids on the teams do car washes and they sell, hoagies or Krispy Kreme or you name it, right? There's a ton of fundraisers every year for all of our sports team. But what we also know, looking at the numbers, is that what we bring in through fundraising and ticket sales for the few sports we do sell tickets for don't cover the costs of referees and things of that nature. So we've been in the red for a few years now as far as what we pay out in supporting the athletics programs versus what we take in. So we're starting to look at some options for taking an additional revenue to try and even those things out. One of the main things that we talked about Tuesday was that we have the new turf field. It's fenced, and there's potential to have admission fees for the new turf field. It doesn't mean that's the way we're going to go, but we're going to try to evaluate how much that could mean to us. The last thing we want to do is raise the cost for anything, but the fact of the matter is that the ref fees go up. Not every year, but they continually go up, and they're also adding referees to a lot of sports. So where some sports may have had, football's a 5-referee game, now it's a 6-referee game, right. So they're adding more referees to the game. I'm not sure what they make at the high school level, but I think it's somewhere around between 100 up to 172 $72 a game per ref, right? So, and we've got a ton of other sports that have multiple referees on the field at the same time, and we just flat out know that what we're bringing in isn't covering the reffing fees. So we're starting to look at different ways without trying to put too much of a burden on everybody, because we want people to come to these events and support our teams, but we need to make things a wash. And believe it or not, you can sell Krispy Kreme donuts to to every person in Pottsgrove, and if you're only making 50 cents a box or $1 a box, it's pretty difficult to cover a $10,000 shortfall. So we're going to start to look. We haven't, I don't think, really even come close to making any decisions, and if we do, we're not going to just slap them on everybody as a surprise, but we do need to start to look at how we can fund these programs so that we're breaking even.
Yeah, I am. Matt, can I just mention something? When the new gym was put in and the turf field, all I heard was, oh, it's going to bring in revenue because we're going to rent it out. It's going to be, is that happening at all? And could that revenue be put towards covering some of the shortfall on the sports teams?
I guess it could, right? I know it's happening, maybe not a lot, but slowly. One of the things I asked about, Ashley, was since we have a bigger gym now and we have the turf field, what about like playoff games, even ones that Pottsgrove isn't involved in? And they made me aware pretty quickly that we don't get a dime for hosting the playoff games. The PIAA gets all that income. I think we might keep the concession funds, but
I get the concession.
right, so there's that. So that was out.
Booster Club.
Right. So, and then if anything does come in, I think it goes to the general fund. It doesn't go directly back into athletics. So I guess it would be our choice if we decided to increase the amount of the athletics budget with that extra income. But even at that, I don't know what the extra has been so far, but the deficit was pretty, shocking. It was big. And it's been that way for a while. So we're borrowing already to make ends meet, not, borrowing from ourselves, but right, with the new gym and the turf field, there's potential there. It just hasn't happened yet.
So my question is, how do other school districts handle this? They all have sports. Presumably, they all sell tickets to
Well-
their sporting events, at least their football.
We
events.
talked about directly, the districts we usually compare ourselves to. Some of them charge higher fees, right? I think maybe Boyertown's got a $6 across-the-board fee. We have a $5 for adults, $3 for students fee, so there's a little money there. Some districts charge even more to get in. Some are pay to play. O&J maybe too. So, yes, and there are less desirable, I think, ways to make up the difference. So we're see what we can do first without being too harsh.
Have we promoted the new gym and the turf field to other schools and programs?
I know we had one girls' soccer group, I believe it was soccer, may have been lacrosse, rent the turf field this summer, and I believe we had one camp use the gym this past summer. Just starting to get the information out to organizations, but a lot of local organizations would be subject to fees and somewhat significant fees, so not everybody wants to use it.
I'll just put it out there. This is one of the things we talked about when we talked about the use of facilities policy, and I think Mr. Nestor made a specific point about with the new turf field if we had, say, a lacrosse school from out of state rent that field for a week to run a clinic in the summertime, and they're, charging $600 a kid, and it's a $50,000 operation or something. Our the fees that we did establish, even though they're tough on one end, on the other end, they're pretty lenient. They would pay a pretty small fee to make a lot of money on a Pottsgrove facility. So that's another thing that we need to make sure we square away before we do have something like that happen.
I think we're reviewing that policy, and maybe we need to keep that in mind next month when we're looking at that.
Now, I also know a couple other things when we discussed, and we'll probably finish up in November before coming to you guys, but one of the items I think we're pretty close to thinking about is going to be charging for the turf field come for the spring. We would need, obviously, board approval for that. So that, we have a meeting in November, and then we'll come to you guys afterwards. And the other option I think we discussed, but obviously we didn't get very far yet, was, is it something that we want to start to incorporate into the actual athletic budget? Because right now they're separated, and then the difference simply just comes right out of the general funds balance. And it's one moving money from one area to the other, but then it'll be up to board discretion then, of course.
And you're talking, right, so charging admission for events at the turf field is what Al's talking about, starting in the spring possibly. If we think that's the way we want to go, we'd come back after the next committee meeting and ask for a motion to do that.
I do have a question. Market Street, that covers all placard type advertisements, or can we incorporate that somehow for programs at the different games to generate additional revenue that way? What do they limit us with?
The football boosters do programs for football, for the football team, and they're able to solicit their own program sponsors, and I would assume, I'm not sure if Boosters does it for the rest of the teams, or if the teams themselves do their programs.
We do the program for the school, for the high school, but we don't do it for each individual team.
Okay. But certainly that money comes to that organization. Okay, it doesn't come to the school district per se. It doesn't, not saying we couldn't do that, but right now it's not structured that way. But any signage, we'd have to refer to our contract with Market Street Sports to make sure we can do it.
Okay, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. I'd like to move on to Curriculum Technology Student Affairs Committee. Mr. Leach or Mr. Lopic?
Thank you. The Curriculum Affairs Committee, we actually cover quite a bit of detail, and I'm not going to go into it. I mean, we got this, you'll see in our meeting minutes, it's like 5 pages long here. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of areas, and there is one area for discussion for the board. Generally, we went through our data review. Now, in our data review, one thing we'd like to keep in mind is that the state yet has given our district and our superintendents and our building administrators and such like that, they have yet to give them the state overall averages and stuff, and as of right now, there is no idea of when that's actually coming. So we have our numbers, but we don't know how we actually compare and such like that as of yet. But it is very clear to our administrators that the state is going to be moving to a growth basis, maybe versus the PSSAs. And Keystone basis. And in that growth basis, one of the main features that they're looking to do is to decrease the gap of the subgroups that are not performing as well, or are known subgroups like our IEPs versus our non-IEPs, whereas the gap in growth may be upwards of 20 to 30% or even higher. They're looking to find a way to close that gap. Now, the benefit to us, and obviously in the foresight of our administrators and this board, is we're actually ahead of the game on this than a lot of the other school districts with our approval of the ECRA system and our approval of the MAP system. because of the approval of those two systems, we actually already have the tools out there to our teachers who actually have had the availability to go and do individual plans for our students that needed the extra remediation or extra planning and such like that. But a couple of the highlights I do want to point out, as in the school district, look, there is no question, no school district's perfect. Our numbers are our numbers, and we are definitely going in the upward level. We still have areas to work, of course. But I want to point out that our AP scores, we did 74.1% of our students that took the test scored a 3 or higher, which is 15.9% better than last year's. We also, in our SAT average, we had an average score of 1,100, which is better than both the state and national average this last year. When you go to our middle school, one of the areas I wanted to point out was our ELA scores for our PSSAs, and I'll just take out the grade 7 level for ELA. It's continuously increased as that cohort's traveled throughout the year. Normally, you'll see a decrease. In that particular year, we're doing very well, and it's on the increase. So obviously, we have some areas, some classes that are needing some work, but we definitely have some improvement already made there. When you move to the next area, we talked about challenge-based learning. Now, this is a project that Dr. Ramage, Dr. Ziegler, and Dr. Bickert, they would go back with the Apple team and such like that. And generally, what it's going to be is going to be more of a research-focused group with how to take real-world situations, bring it back to our students, and have them do a focus space and learn from that. So that's this. I'm not going to go into detail. That one I'm going to pass until the thing. The next item obviously came up was the third language survey process and results. The survey came back, and the survey overwhelmingly says that we would like to bring a third language back, whether that be French, as in maybe the survey had a little bit more of a bias towards French, maybe it didn't. We'll look at that. But we have a lot more questions that are going to need to be answered. But the survey did give us enough information to say that we do definitely have the interest from the community to at least go on to the next level and actually bring out some more questions and make sure we have all this done. With this possibility, if we wanted to get it in by next year, we're going to have to move along relatively quickly in the curriculum committee because the next year's classes are going to be coming to us at a much earlier pace this year. Last year and the years prior was always usually in February. This year we're probably looking in November or December timeframe, I believe. So we're going to want to have to move. If we're going to invest into some program like this, we're definitely going to have to be in agreement as into how much we're going to invest because we're looking at not only bringing back the third language, but we're also looking at bringing in an exploratory program that would give our younger students that haven't quite entered the language program as in to go through the whole benefit, the process, checking out exactly which language they would be interested in, and then proceeding into that language. I understand the school district did at one time have the exploratory program. For one reason or another, it was dismantled or changed or whatever like that, but we're looking at bringing that back. Obviously, if we're going to bring that back, then we want to make sure we have the staffing available so the students, as best as possible, if they want French, they take French. They want Spanish, they take Spanish. They want German, they take German. All right. Now the area that can be up for discussion, of course, it'll be coming to the board at the next meeting, but this is in regards to our MAP programming. From our administrators and our building leaders, it was pretty evident that the teachers really are enthralled with the MAP testing, and they seem to want more and more of that information. The middle school and the lower grades actually have a lot of the MAP testing because obviously we grade 2 through 8. So as we continue to go, they'll get more and more data. The issue we have is the high school does not have this data as of yet. They can look at past data, but once you've reached 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, there's really not much there. So the administration is looking into possibly signing off on a commitment to bring the MAP testing to the 9th and 10th grade. This would be a 3-year commitment, which we've already invested so heavily in the 2 through 8, so this would not be much of an investment, but it will also decrease our total cost by $1 per student. So if you take out the total cost of what we're saving, which is going to be over $2,000 for other students, add in those 2 grades, it ends up being only a $3,190 increase overall, but it also gives us another 2 years worth of student data for our teachers and our administrators. This also will help out in scheduling because, as we know, the MAP testing is very strong on being able to project our students, show their growth, show their areas, their strengths, show their weaknesses, so when a teacher is ready to recommend a class, he'll be able to recommend or she'll be able to recommend them to the correct class going forward. So that's something that if anybody has any questions of, we'll obviously be able to answer, but we're looking at bringing that to the board at the next meeting.
I just want to clarify one thing you said there, Al. We currently offer MAP testing in grades 2 through 8, but it's available through 10th. When we started, we deliberately chose 2 through 8, knowing that we could have done 9th and 10th. And now what the administration is recommending we consider is adding 9th and 10th with the savings of $1 per student. But the additional cost of adding it for the 9th and 10th graders. And if I remember correctly, the 9th and 10th graders would take the test twice a year, as opposed to our 2 through 8 who take the test 3 times a year. So just wanted to make sure that that's clear what is ultimately. I think it's going to be next month that the request comes before the board. So we discussed this at length in the committee. And I think the committee unanimously did agree to make the recommendation that we add the MAP testing for 9th and 10th grade.
If there's no questions, then we're...
Are we going to be hearing more about the data at the board level? Or? I'm looking at something that says 25% in 8th grade, 25% proficient or above. Are we going to be hearing more specifics, recommendations?
We're going to wait till the SPP and the state averages come out. I think in fairness to the process, we've done this every year since for 15 or whatever this process has been. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to then continue to take a look at the data. Yes, we always do, and we always come back with a summary of that piece once the SPP and the PSSA state averages come out.
The only question, Bill, is I know it's not at the full board level, but we did go and spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours going through the data.
Maybe I'm alone in this, but it seems to me that should be at the board level. This is pretty significant, especially with the
Understood, and I wouldn't
flow of our
disagree at
scores.
all. The only thing about bringing it to the committee level allows us to really get into detail versus coming here, and we will come in here in the future as in more of a, okay, this is our data, this is where we're at, as a summary level, because we don't have 2 to 3 hours just to go over the data here. And the committee level is available to all board members and, of course, the public to attend. So that's why we try to go into the detail and the meat of the data there, bring the summary after we have everything, and then, of course, inform the public of the entire summary.
And something to keep in mind, it was, as you said, you're pointing out some of the numbers there. By themselves, they don't look promising in some, in other cases they do, but really they mean nothing at this point until we know how it compares to what the state average was. Because we need to be able to look at it and say, well, the one was 25 and the other one was 60-something, but was the average for the state 5 or 10? We don't know. So we can talk about how obviously the numbers are falling, but if the numbers are still higher than the state, and then we also discussed actually that the fact that the state is going to be changing the test formats to drop the number of questions to reduce the amount of time to take it, which means it'll be less accurate in the end.
I don't disagree with the importance of being able to see the state average in it, continues to be a sore point for me that the state releases individual data without the state averages. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's out of our hands. But the fact remains that what we've been seeing and continue to see over the years is that this district is one of the highest, has one of the highest tax bases, or the highest taxes, in one of the lowest performing districts score-wise, test score-wise. And that continues to be a concern. So I think we did an excellent job. The board had put pressure on. The curriculum, the math and language arts curriculum was relooked at in a very thorough manner with the staff involvement, which was excellent. So big thanks to Dr. Shirk. We have that new curriculum, or new resource, I should say, which clearly would not affect these scores. That resource just got in place this year. But we still need to look at, and I'm sure the committee is, looking at science. But I think we need to be looking at the bigger picture, and that's what I want to hear from the administrators. Resources, great, we're there, put the time in, put the finances, the money into it, but what other areas need to be looked at, and that's what I would like to hear from the administrators.
Well, one area, and the whole idea is that that's the reason why we voted and brought in MAP, is because now they can actually go in, pinpoint areas you can actually look, and you were at the meeting as well, that you can see the flow of the students. You can see that this group is falling behind. What can we do to help them? What can we do to monitor them? And this is what the map does to bring up those scores. So work is being done.
I would add that
You don't feel work is being done around to improve the scores?
I disagree that we're doing enough.
Well, there's always more that can be done.
Great, and we need to do it.
And what is that?
I don't think that's my place. I think that's why we have administrators here. School board members don't get elected based on their knowledge of how to increase scores.
Well,
That's not what I was voted in
but
for.
school board members have been working on this for quite a while, and we've instituted a great deal of changes in this school district in a very short period of time, including changes in leadership, including adding the MAP testing, which is the first time that we have predictive results in the beginning of the year. With our students, as well as readiness information that our teachers can use to target their lesson plans, as well as replacing our math and language arts resources throughout the schools. We've done an awful lot in a short period of time to try and address these issues. And whether or not it's everything that we need to do is a good question, but there is such a thing as doing too much all at once as well. The changes that we've put into place did not have any impact on last year's tests, and it's going to take some time for them to show those changes to bear fruit. So while I agree with you that we need to do better, and it's been a major focus of my soon-to-be 4 years on this board, this is the first time that I feel as if we are actually doing the things necessary to make those change, to make the improvements that are necessary. So I think that we should discuss it in more detail at the board level. I agree with you there, but I also agree with Mr. Leach. We don't have the amount of time that we put in at a curriculum meeting to delve into the details. That's why we have a committee structure. And that's why all legislative bodies have committee structures. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the next year or two as it relates to our test scores. But let's not forget that every time we start moving in a particular direction, the state comes out with something new and pulls the rug out from under us. So the next thing, as Jim mentioned, is they're shortening the test time. And there's still a good possibility that they're going to completely eliminate the Keystone tests. They changed the cut scores 2 years ago, and that affected us negatively. And I also agree, without the state averages, we just can't really gauge where the heck we are. So it's not really appropriate to have a board-level discussion that is critical or praising until we can see where we are as it relates to the rest of the state. On appearances, we still have huge places to improve. But we knew that before we took the tests this year.
And that's what I thank you for those comments, and that's what I want to, I think, hear more of, recognition that we do continue to have huge areas of improvement to make. Now, one area I have not ever heard about since I've been on the board or prior, or should I prior, is we've talked resources, we've talked head leadership, we've talked, different things like that. There's a key component in our scores and our students' learning and our graduation rates and all this, and that's our staff, our teachers specifically, especially, and which I continue to believe that we have some of the best teachers from direct observation when I was in the buildings, and just from word of mouth. But I don't hear, and it's not to say it's not happening, but I don't hear, and I would personally like to hear more of what we, as in our building administrators, are doing in their buildings. I'm not looking for names and this sort of thing, or any identifying information with particular staff, but where are things at? And that leads me to my next point in regards to the survey. But before I get there, the survey, there were several excellent comments, and a couple comments that were specific to some staff, some positive and some negative, and some that were very concerning, things that we wouldn't at a board level normally see. I want to know that we are, of course, hiring the best of the best. We hear a little bit about that. We're training them in the best way possible. We hear about that. But what are we doing to monitor and make sure we're continuing to get the best out of our teachers and keeping the best, or encouraging those that are struggling? How are we doing that? That's a piece that I know I never hear about, and that's an issue for me. Before I say my goodbyes, the survey, thank you to Dr. Shirk and the team, whoever put it out, except for the continued grammar issues. I think it was a very well-written survey. Went out to several different populations, which was great to see. The results were broken down by the different populations, which was very nice. And my question is, with the survey results, where are we going from here with that? I think it's important for the community, who were very appreciative based on the comments that I read, but it's important for them to say, hey, you asked our opinions, now what are you doing about them? So my question is, and if you answered it, I apologize, but my question is to Dr. Shirk, where are we going from here in addressing the comments? Is it something that can be addressed to the board level, which would then get to the committee or newsletter, or what's the plan for that?
Wait, can I ask a real quick question before? I want to clarify, Mr. Bill, you're talking about the district survey, not the third language survey, because I was talking about the third language survey, so I just want to clarify that.
Yep, you're right.
As far as, and I'm not sure what the process, maybe Daniel can tell me, but I know that multiple curriculum meetings, we have spoken about the fact whenever there's a question with, well, we noticed this particular AP class maybe doesn't seem to be doing well in this, or, on the PSSAs, I know you've told us, and again, I apologize, I don't remember the process, but where you have discussions with the building administrators, and then you go through, and then you talk to the teachers and the groups, and so there is a process, because we've been told about it multiple times, and it seems to always be in action.
Mr. Parker, regarding the survey, when I sent the survey out, I sent a letter with it with the areas that the community spoke very highly of us in. And then right below that, there was bullet points that showed the community, the areas that we were going to be working on this year. So we just had a first round of administrative, elementary and secondary principal meetings, and we're starting to discuss those particular issues. And as we move forward throughout the year, they will continue to be a focus. There'll be a focus in the superintendent's goals as we present them in the next month. So it'll all tie in. That survey will tie into the district goals. It'll tie into building goals. And it'll be, again, an opportunity to have that reevaluated in the following year. As far as answering your question, Mr. Parker, you're an educator, and you've been in the field. And I think it's safe for me to say, and I can say this with the experience I've had, when it comes to a teaching staff, there's never an administrator that overlooks anything that is not in the best interest of children. And one of the things that we do very well at Pottsgrove is we are a small enough district that we have a pulse on what's going on. And our scores are reflective of our population. And, our population, our top kids are our top kids. I'll put our top kids against anybody in the country because our AP scores show that, and our SAT score that, and our scholar athletes do that as well, as a combination. So what we continue to do, and what the growth model has done with MAP is, we are concerned with the kids at the top, our high achievers. So our goal, one of our goals this coming year will be, how do we move our high achievers, our gifted kids? Because we can't leave them stagnant, okay? So we're going to look at our kids in the middle, who are our, college prep kids, who, kids who are in transition with college and career and technical trades. We want to make sure that they continue to grow as well. And then we have this group of lower performing children that we have in our district, which is our biggest challenge. And our goal is to close that achievement gap in all of our subgroups, okay? That is our IEPs. That is African American, okay? That is, all those Hispanic, all those specific groups, that's our job. It's looking us right in the face, and we talk about it every single day. This year with ECRA and this year with MAP, we now have a portfolio of progress for every student in this district. And that portfolio will follow that student from 2nd to 3rd to 8th grade. We'll be able to make real-time decisions that don't occur in PSSA because PSSA tests we're always looking in the rearview mirror. What did we do wrong? What did the kids need work on? And then we try to transfer the information from the 4th grade back to 3rd and 4th up to 5th. And what happens is it just doesn't, the message just we spin our wheels. And this is not about Pottsgrove. I mean, in the Upper Perkiomen School District or the Springford School District, we've had the same concerns. So I feel supported by the board that we invested in ECRA, we invested in MAP, we have the tools to make real-time decisions, and our teachers now, to your question, they can now have the ability to make real-time decisions. We have a MAP testing period coming up next week. They're going to find out if Bill Shirk is where he should be or not. And if he's not, then they're going to make the real-time decisions. They're not going to wait till the spring PSSA score to try to figure it out. They're going to be able to say, at the end of October, this is what I'm doing for my lower kids, my middle kids, and our upper kids to make those specific decisions. So we are ahead of the curve, and I feel that we're in perfect shape. And what we'll do is we'll be able to calculate, based on growth, what teachers and what students are or are not making growth. So we'll be able to make better administrative decisions on your concerns because we'll be able to collaborate and figure out more with data that what kids are moving best with teachers and what students aren't moving best, and then what can we do then for professional development to help the students, and then obviously the engagement piece with our students. So I think you got a great thing going here. I've been doing this for 33 years, Mr. Parker, and I've been obviously a chief officer here for a year. I take it very seriously. So I think that this district, with the students that we have, and I think that's important, that we, you know, we service everybody. It's all, you know, one of the things we say in our meetings is all means all. All doesn't mean the top, and all doesn't mean the bottom. We're in between. And we have the ability, because of our intimate size of this district, to help every student. We don't have 6,000 kids, we have 3. We don't have over 10,000 like North Penn. We're in a great position to service kids, and that's probably what makes me most proud of where I'm at tonight and today, is because we have that ability, and the school board, in the time that I've been here, have supported that and done what's best for kids. So though I appreciate your thought, because you want the best, I understand that, you want the best out of our teachers, you want the best services for our kids, and I think we are doing those things, and we're doing them with due diligence, and when we find somebody who's not, we don't overlook it. That would be totally against the professional creed that any of us ever took, to overlook like incompetence or somebody who's not doing what's best for kids. So I appreciate you letting me say that. Obviously, I'm passionate about it, but I think it's a great place. We have great people, and I'll continue. And I say this, I just met with the middle school yesterday. I continue to challenge you. This is not the end. This is just the start. And I think our faculty is responding to that. Thank you.
Just one more quick point, and that is when Matt, Kelly, and I ran with Don 4 years ago, one of our key tenets was we wanted to see a greater emphasis on data-driven decisions. And what I just heard from Dr. Shirk, to me, is validation that our goal has been attained, because we are now more than ever before using data to inform our decisions about student, all the way down to the classroom level, and how we teach each individual student. So you can't get more data-driven than that, and so I applaud what the district is doing along these lines. It was a necessary change. It's going to take some time to show results.
I don't want to take us down another path here, but just to circle back to the first thing that Bill said, I agree that because this is such a big issue, we'd like to look at it. I mean, for me personally, I'd like to get some kind of look at the board level, and I agree, Al, that we don't have the hours and hours, and I mean, you're talking 2 hours, you're talking one meeting. I'm sure it's not the last meeting that you're going to talk about this data either. So, and I know we're waiting for state averages to come in. I would just ask if at some point sooner than later, at least we can get an update, you know, a full board level update. What did we find out from this data, and what are we doing with it? I know we're already doing a lot, but yeah, if you're going to tweak something because of something specific that's in this this report, then maybe we can get an update and get a chance to talk about where we're going.
Yep.
I know data is obviously one of the most important things, and obviously we spend a lot of resources on that, and like I said, we spend a lot of time on that. Does the board have any questions in regards to the other 2 items? Because they're going to both be also, if they come and when they come to the board, expense items, the changing the map to 910 and possibly the 3rd language. Does the board have any direction they want the committee to go? Do they have any opinions on how they're looking?
I do, on one. And I haven't been at the committee meetings, but my question was around the 3rd language. I saw the survey. It was, my opinion, it pretty clearly asked if we want to bring French back. So whether it was biased towards French or not, I would say yes, it definitely was. But I know that's what you guys are talking about at the committee level. So my question is, well, I had a few questions around French, because and I said it, when we got rid of the French program, it was because of low enrollment. I think really that was just the main reason, is we did not have the kids in the class to justify keeping it running, which I do understand, it could be any number of reasons why we couldn't get enrollment in that class. If you get an awesome teacher in there who gets kids energized and the word gets out, and then all of a sudden you have to turn people away from a language. But my comment when we decided that day to cut the program, I hate to even say it, but, because we did. I had 6 years of French and never had the opportunity to use it. And my question is, in this new world with different countries and languages coming to the forefront for business and things like that, is that the only choice available to me? And I've talked around and asked a lot of people questions, and I know there's maybe some limitations on what teachers are available for what languages out there. French is the traditional third language. Pretty much everywhere it's Spanish, German, and French. And, German's the same. If you don't go to Germany, you're going to have a tough time using your German sometimes. But, so my question is around the decision for French. Is it all the way, are we down that path yet, or are there other languages to consider?
No, actually, what the survey we wanted to send out, and we did send it out a little bit too biased towards French. It probably should have had more things. It was mainly to try to find if we definitely are going to have the interest level in bringing a third language back. It not necessarily is going to be French. We know that there is obviously Mandarin may be more available out there, Chinese, other languages may more. Well,
We hit road
Japanese and such.
Chinese before, right?
Again, what we're looking at in bringing the third language back, and the importance that we thought is we're one of the few, if not the only district that only offers just 2 languages in-house. Obviously, you can learn other languages outside. Whether or not you want to bring a Rosetta Stone program to the school, whether you want to bring teachers to school, all that's the additional questions, and what languages. The survey, really, we wanted to see, is there going to be level? Because this is going to have to be not just an investment in, okay, we'll just go and get a half teacher. No, this is going to have to be a district-wide investment on building a program from scratch that doesn't have one now. We don't want to follow the same path we did with the French last time, in the fact that we ended up having lower enrollment, and then eventually we ended up cutting it. So we want to make sure we're going to do this the right way as best as possible. If we're going to bring it back, we're going to make sure we have the investment, we have the interest, and we have the right people involved. Same thing goes, obviously, as when we were discussing about the availability, as into, yeah, I'd love to bring lots of different languages back. We're going to have to make sure we have the availability, of course, like you just said, as into what teachers we can bring to the district, so that we can make sure that you have the staffing available and the right languages available for our students. So it's going to be it's a much bigger process than simply just saying we all want a third language. We want to make sure we do this 100%, and if we're going to do the investment, we want to make sure we're there at 100% for it.
I mostly agree with what you just said, Al, but a couple of points. First, I don't really believe we have, I think we need to distinguish between necessities and luxuries when it comes to the languages we teach. And I said something along these lines at the committee structure, at the committee meeting. To me, there's a baseline that we need to offer in order to be to play on the same field as our neighboring school districts that are performing better than us. And they're all offering French. They're all offering Spanish. I don't know if they're all offering German, but they're all offering French and Spanish. Some are offering Mandarin. I happen to know, because I inquired, Springford offers Mandarin. The way they do it is they have a language teacher who doesn't speak Mandarin, who is the teacher in the classroom, and then they contract with a distance learning teacher in Texas who teaches Mandarin. So they pay for him or her, and they pay for the classroom teacher to facilitate the learning. And that's how they do Mandarin. And the reason they do it that way is there just aren't enough people in our state who are certified to teach Mandarin. So we can say, oh, let's teach Mandarin or Japanese or Arabic or Russian because those languages may be more relevant than German or French. But the reality is we're just not, those are luxuries. Those are luxuries that would be great to be able to offer them. I'd love to be able to offer Latin too, you know, but it's a luxury. And it's a luxury that is, should go second to offering a baseline language program, which in my personal opinion does include French. I said this before, I'll say it again. I completely regret voting to cancel French when I did it. It was one of the first votes we took when we joined the board. And I think that while the survey may have had some bias towards French, it also asked people to rank French, German, and Spanish as to which languages they'd like their students to take. And French won out over German, which we already offer. So while the first question, do you want to add French, may have been biased, the second question wasn't a biased question, and it showed that there is strong interest in French. I'll also point out that it's one of the most popular programs in several of our neighboring school districts. So the reasons why our French program withered on the vine, as it did, aren't because kids don't want to take it. There's other reasons, because we're not that different from our neighbors that, oh, Pottsgrove kids don't want to take French, but Springford kids do. It just doesn't make any sense. It didn't make sense to me then, and it doesn't make sense to me now. So I agree we need to do our due diligence. We need to think this through. We need to think through the costs. An exploratory program has an extra cost compared to now. A new French program has extra costs in 2 schools. It's a big deal, and I'm not suggesting it isn't a big deal. But, you know, we asked about this 3 years ago. Under a different administration, and we're finally moving forward with getting this considered. And I personally think that we shouldn't be over-deliberative. We know how to make a foreign language program work. And if we examine the reasons why French failed, we can ensure that we not make the same mistakes. Or we could just say 2 languages. But you know what? In my opinion, if we're going to offer 2 languages, it should be French and Spanish, not German and Spanish. So I'm off my soapbox.
Your comment about relevancy in languages. Being in a household with a language teacher, I do get bombarded quite often, and I get to read a lot of articles, and I've done a lot of research on this as well through articles. Going on, I mean, any one of you, and I can probably find my browser history to tell you the different articles, but, you know, going through, like, you know, Forbes magazine, for example, had an article about how if you wanted to go into business in the future, Africa is going to be the country of choice, it's going to be booming with business, a lot of industry in that way, and you need to learn French. 2 months later, Forbes wrote that German, Russian, and Mandarin were the languages of the future. They changed their mind. If you read through the different articles, you know, business, if you're going into business, you're definitely going to want to go to South America. Portuguese is for you. Russian Federation. It changes. I mean, every language is valid. German is very big for science and finance, especially throughout Europe. You go into Asia, you've got French, and then you've got different dialects. If you're going into technology, depending on what parts of the subcontinent, if you're going into, you know, for Hindi and all the variations of that, it's all languages are going to be relevant, depending on what your future what you want your future to be. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You know, we're not going to have the right program for everybody because there's just no way to do it.
Okay, so all I'm asking is that we do the due diligence, because, and I'm not taking away from anything that anybody said here, because I agree with all of it. just, go back 10 minutes before when we were talking about data-driven decisions, and that's all I'm asking for here. So, and for the record, I agree that 3 language is table stakes, and we should do that. My question is just, what should those 3 be? Best bang for the buck, best advantage to all of our students that are going to take it. What should those 3 be? That's my question, and hopefully, I trust you guys to get to the bottom of it. That's just my request for the committee, that's all.
The only last thing I want to say is, I know Dr. Shirk's going to go in much more detail with different things, is to me, and I don't disagree with Rick in regards to the language and such. I disagree as in just, I want to do our due diligence, and he does too, and everything like that. His preference is French. I just don't have a preference. To me, 90 to 99% of our students are really never going to lose whatever language we use. I don't care if you picked Mandarin, I don't care if you picked French, I don't care if you picked German, maybe Spanish. But most of our students are going to learn a language. To me, I want them to learn the culture. I want them to learn versus thinking, oh, well, they're going to now learn Mandarin, so they're going to be available to go and move to China and such like that. That's great if that would happen. 90% of our students are going to stay probably in-house, in the area and such like that. So I'm more about making sure they learn more cultures, be more evolved and everything like that. And rather than looking at, okay, well, if they learn Arabic now, they're going to be really more in demand if they go here. To me, it's more of we need 3 languages to make sure our students have the best possible.
Well, but I want to clarify that it's not that I want French, it's that I think that all the other choices I've heard aren't practical. They're not practical for several reasons. First of all, finding certified teachers to teach the program. So more, if somebody can present another language that is practical and where there'll be available staff to keep the program staffed for the duration of the program, which is forever, then I'm certainly open to considering it as an alternative. But based on what I know about it, I just don't really think that it's practical for us to add Mandarin, except in the way that I described a neighboring district does it. I don't think it's practical to add these other programs. We might luck out and find a teacher for one of those programs, but we'll need 2, first of all, to have a good program in the middle and high. And then what happens if one of those teachers leaves? If there isn't an available staff. So, if we survey the community and they say American Sign Language or Mandarin, that doesn't really change my mind in and of itself, unless we can demonstrate that there's an available labor pool to teach the language.
And can I just add the funds for it? Because that's the other piece that, will it fit in the budget?
Just to sum it up, if I may, I think the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to gauge community interest. So we gauged community interest that there was interest in expanding our offerings. And, 348 people responded to that. That was brought to the committee. We talked about it. I had an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Voris this week, and I'm going to sit down with him and Dr. Rabinowitz in the next couple days. But we're looking at our next steps. And I know last week there was concerns from our faculty that we didn't include them. We didn't include them because we didn't know what the interest was going to be. So if there wasn't any interest, we weren't going to jump the gun. So now that we have the interest, we want to bring our world language department in for some next steps. We want to take a look at what other, local programs at the middle school and how they're effective, what kind of schedule change, because it's going to affect the middle school schedule. So we have to look at schedule changes. We have to look at programs that are currently working. We have to identify our staffing issues, which come with the cost. And then we have to basically reconvene with our local experts, our world language department, and all at the same time keep our curriculum committee up to date with these decisions along the way. So for us to do due diligence, it will take a little time. And I ask that the board, have patience with that, because we'll see the project through. But if we're going to go out and to look at other programs, we have to change a middle school schedule. It's just going to take some time to do that. And I think it's definitely doable. But we just want to be thoughtful in the process. That's all we do, because we want to be able to come back and say, here's the cost value. This is what it's going to cost. If we want to implement the exploratory program at the middle school, this is a schedule change cost, because that could, just a schedule change alone could have some costs, hidden costs we don't know about as we sit here tonight. But we're capable of doing this and doing it in-house. I don't think we need help from anybody. We have enough expertise on our staff, and we have enough local school districts around that run these programs that we can go out and model some of the programs that are already in existence. So we just need a little time. We just came off of last week's, meeting, and we had a little brainstorming session this week early. We're going to continue to do that, and we'll get back with an overall plan, with curriculum at the next meeting, and we'll go from there. So, thank you.
And if there's no more questions, that's my report.
New business. We are going to start the new business segment with talking about our financial accounting software, and I'm going to turn that to Mr. Nestor to explain, and then we'll go with questions from there.
Thank you, Dr. Shirk. Last month, we were contacted by our financial accounting software developer and notified that they were going to terminate our software product effective June 30, 2019. Now that's nearly 2 years away, but given the time involved in researching and implementing a new software system, it's going to take us pretty much most of that time to get it up and running in time to make a conversion, if we choose to go that way. This affects us and about 10 other districts in Pennsylvania, which we've been in contact with since that point in time. Just a couple weeks ago, we found a independent third party who also services this type of software that was willing to provide for us an evaluation of our licensing agreement to see if we could retain the use of our software and contract with another vendor to provide the development services. That's the first ray of hope we've heard since the notification that they were going to terminate our software. The software has worked extremely well for the district. We're very knowledgeable in the application of the software, and we've incorporated a number of enhancements. We are actually right in the process of starting to plan a rollout of an employee open enrollment portal for healthcare and whatnot. That we put the brakes on because we're certainly not looking to develop anything new and lose it. But the impact of switching accounting software, the learning curve involved in training up our staff, and the cost involved in transitioning to a new software are both significant concerns. When we did the software acquisition 10 years ago, we invested about $175,000. I'm assuming that's going to be up significantly as we go if we have to go through another software acquisition. So this third-party evaluator has contacted us. We've talked to them. They think they can do the evaluation for us with about 15 hours of work at $145 an hour. So I'm looking for direction from the board. If we invest this money and find out that no, we can't, at least we know we can't. If we invest this money and we find out that yes, we can retain the software, then we may avoid the investment of $200,000 to $250,000 in a new product. So we're looking for some guidance from the school board on whether or not they would be willing to invest up to $3,000 in this evaluation.
What
Can you
about
tell us
going, I'm sorry, what about going with the 10 other districts and saying, hey, we found this company that could look at this one, we all chip in a little bit?
We can do that, however, they would need to all research each individual's organization's licensing structure as well. So it may not be as much of a savings, but we certainly could reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to participate in the cost. But whether or not, I mean, I think some of that 10 may just say we're going to move, but I think we're in a position where we're using the system probably more in depth than most of the other clients, and we'd really hate to try to kind of unwrap that and try and rewrap it in a new package. So.
Can you tell us who the Microsoft partner is?
The name of the company right now is Jitasa. When we bought the software, it was AVF Consulting Group. They had a couple name changes, and then they were recently, last spring, purchased by a company named Jitasa.
Oh, but what, the third party that is going to do the evaluation that you're talking about?
We contracted with this individual through a recruitment company named Nigel Frank. I don't have the name of the vendor in front of me.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
That's all right. And I understand that you got to pay the 15 times $145 to get a result. But is there some level of belief that the result will be positive? I mean, or are we just shooting 15 times $145 in the air and hoping it sticks to something?
No, he needs to see our software licensing agreement, our Microsoft license agreement, and that's the key issue. Depending on how it's structured, apparently you can migrate this software to another Microsoft partner. But he can't say that without fail unless he looks at does the research on the licensing agreement.
And is it up to 15 hours? Or is it going to take 15 hours?
They've projected 15. It could be 15, it could be 18, it could be 14. He just gave us an estimate of 15 hours.
Okay. Well, I mean, how much do we have invested into this software?
Like I said, the original acquisition was about $175,000. We've been paying annual maintenance fees of $15,000 a year, and we recently upgraded at another tune of about $48,000.
And if we have to flush it down the toilet and buy new, it's going to cost us at least.
I'm thinking it's going to be $200,000 to $250,000.
To me, it's worth paying the 15 times 145 to hopefully not have to buy a whole new system and train everybody to use it and go through all those pains. So I don't like shooting it into the air and hoping it sticks either, but.
No, I mean, we had a somewhat lengthy conversation with this gentleman. He seemed to be very knowledgeable in it, and he also he gave us more than a glimmer of hope. But
that's what I was looking to hear.
It was, I think he would be surprised if it couldn't be done, but I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Okay. Do we need a vote on this?
Yeah, you need a motion for to do the
If
investigation.
if the board agrees with it, then I need a motion to contract with Nigel Frank in an amount not to exceed $3,000.
I'll make the motion.
Motion and a second. Anyone? Comments, questions?
Quick question. David, does the state recommend a software vendor for our purposes or for any district's purposes?
No, there are no state guidelines on accounting software.
And so they don't, do they provide any purchasing ability with it or discounts for whatever we choose?
No, they're all company specific.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Do we have any more new business?
I have one thing. Maybe a couple weeks ago, I sent you all a link about elections that we have to vote on for the PSBA slate of candidates. I'm sure nobody is ready to actually make any votes tonight. So I just want to encourage you, if you could, and I'd be happy to resend the link, or just go to psba.com. They have a link there on their website. We have to vote on these at our next meeting, so, because I have to forward our votes after next meeting. So I'm going to ask if we could put it on the agenda, and that way we'll get it done. So there's only 6, and actually 2 are running unopposed. So we really only have to vote on 4. So that's it.
So it's not a lot of research and homework, but do your homework so we can vote at the next meeting. Okay, anyone else? So at this time, we have a opportunity for any further public comment. Do we have any additional public comment? Sure, no, come on up. Yeah, right there. It should be on.
Now you can all hear me. All right. Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gwen Gundrum. I am the full-time German teacher here at the high school, and I'd like to welcome you to my classroom. Welcome. So this is regarding the survey that was put out to the community, which I have a copy of the results here, as well as 8 pages of comments that were also sent in with the results. The survey was addressing whether or not we wanted to add French as a 3rd language. My question is, why is this turning into removing German? We have not had a decline in enrollment. We have not had a decline in AP scores. Also, German is the only language, both currently and historically, that has ever offered an exchange program. We're currently in our 10th year. We also have a certificate from the Department of State over there congratulating us on our commitment to citizen diplomacy and all that good stuff. So, my students, they go almost every school year, almost every summer. They go for a month, and they stay with host families. This gives them a full immersion experience with German language and culture, which we don't offer with our other languages. So this was not highlighted in the survey. Most of the community is not aware that this is offered in this particular language. So I think it is a little biased in that not all the information was presented. Also, I would like to note that the exchange program is at no cost to the school district or the taxpayers in any way, shape, or form unless their child is actually traveling.
Mrs. Gundrum, can I just interrupt you and take my foot out of my mouth for a second? I was making a point. The point was that we should add French.
Yes.
I really have no desire to remove German, so I want to make that clear to you, especially. The point I was making was that most school districts offer French, and that was the only point that I should have made. So my apologies to you. I don't think that any of us is considering that we are talking about adding a 3rd language, whether or not we can afford it. And if so, what language it should be. My personal belief is it should be French, but I'm open to considering other options if they are practical. My only point was that most school districts offer French, and we don't. So please feel free to continue, but since I'm the one who made the statement, I wanted to make that clear to you.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I was hearing some, I guess it was just the way things were worded, you know, that German wasn't very practical and stuff like that, and that kind of, you know, perked my ears a little bit. So I just wanted to put some information out there that maybe folks weren't aware of, you know, and just kind of, you know, give us some presents. We're here. We do things, and the kids really enjoy it. So I just wanted to get our voice out there. And, you know, I really appreciate that you guys are going to be including us moving forward with curriculum decisions based on world language. So I thank you very much for that.
Any further public comment at this time? Okay. So we will adjourn the meeting at this time. Thanks, everybody.
But Upper Pennsburg started this whole steering committee of this community that gets together and basically